am I tonight? Play for Ava.
Depends. Will your friend, the footballer, be there?
Oh, friend! Football friend!
Oh, what a superb goal! Stephen Moore, that is extraordinary from Ben Garuccio.
You're listening to Football Friends with Ben Garuccio and Stefan Mork, and we're back after a couple weeks off as finals really heats up. We look at all the intrigue and possible outcomes ahead of this weekend's semi-final second legs. Plus we gear up for Global Football Week as Ben makes the shortlist to play Newcastle United, and we have some tickets to give away so you can be right there for it all. And the King of Newcastle, Jason Hoffman, joins us fresh off the back of his final professional season. All that and more coming up on Football Friends.
And welcome back to another episode. We're really sorry we've missed a couple of weeks, but Ben's been gallivanting about Europe, trying to plan his wedding for next off-season, so we haven't been able to tie him down, but really excited to get another episode in. Welcome, Ben. Where are you coming in from today?
I'm in Lucca, actually, in Italy. So me and Jazz are around visiting our wedding venue that we've booked in for next year. So we went yesterday to see it for the first time in real life and did a few food tastings. Today we got another food tasting with a different caterer. Got to see some flowers, all the exciting stuff for the male in the wedding planning process. So Jazz is in her element and I'm just along for the ride. I don't mind the food and the wine, so that's quite good. But happy to be back. And obviously been a little bit difficult, to be honest, to follow the football over here. And honestly, for the first probably 3 or 4 days that I was here in Europe, did not even click that obviously the football, I don't need to watch football in the middle of the night. So there was games on and I was completely forgetting to even watch them. Like there was Premier League on and I was forgetting. I was watching like the next morning. I was like, fuck, that was on at 3 o'clock yesterday when I was sitting in the room doing nothing. So it's a little bit of adjustment, but no, it's good over here. Obviously, you get to watch football basically whenever you want, which is unreal.
Yeah, no, it's something that we're never going to be able to have here in Australia with the time zone. But we are lucky enough actually to be getting some Premier League teams out to Australia. We have Tottenham, we have Newcastle for the men's, and in the women's we have Arsenal. You've just been announced you've been called into the All-Stars, so they're very, very short on numbers at left back.
Not short on midfielders though, so there's no space for Stefan Mork in the squad. But obviously very happy and proud to be called up. It's always a nice thing to be recognised, and obviously at the moment with the A-League men's, there's obviously still the teams that are playing in finals, so the full squad would be announced in due course. As we made our predictions a couple of weeks ago, they're looking quite good at the moment. So
what did you say again?
I said Wellington. You actually said no. You said Melbourne City were going to go all the way, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I had Melbourne City making it, but I had I think a Central Coast victory final.
Victory, that's right. Yeah, you said victory and victory to win. You said victory to win.
Yeah, so to be honest, I'm not looking too far off. Central Coast obviously going into the second leg in a very, very good position. Sydney, couple of red cards, a few injuries. They've got the 1-goal lead. Central Coast, they're playing at home in front of a sold-out crowd. But probably you'd say in the other game, Wellington, 0-0 away from home, a great result for them. So they're probably in the box seat. But that game is anyone's, isn't it? Like it's going to be so interesting to see who wins these games.
Yeah, well, they're going to the cake tin for potentially first time in history of sellout as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I said Central Coast Wellington with Central Coast winning it. So look, what Central Coast have done, obviously, especially with the AFC Cup as well this year, has been fucking unbelievable, to be honest. And Storm Roux came out and said that it has to go down as one of the great teams in A-League history. And to be fair, he's got a pretty strong case for what they've done this year with the amount of travel, the delays, everything that they've gone through, change of coach, a few new players, losing, your best player in Tulio, and still being able to achieve what they have so far, it's honestly unbelievable. And if they do win it, they've literally done the treble, which is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's the AFC Cup. It's obviously changing next year, and it is. The quality of the opposition, especially in the group stage, is quite poor. But you still got to go there. You still got to win those games. You travel for the away games, and the travel. In Champions League, Europa League, like the travel's easy. Like obviously there's some big ones if you go on maybe to Russia, Ukraine, far away, but in comparison to what it's like in Asia, like what they had to do to get back from Kyrgyzstan, I think it was, and then you've got the delays, and then to come out against us when we played and to win that game, like it's something that with a small squad they deserve. Every single plaudit that comes their way, everyone involved with the club, because it's not just the players on the field; it's obviously everything off the field as well. So, is it Richard Pill? If I've got his name wrong, I'm really sorry. I think he's the owner. Matt Simon's obviously involved there. They've got good people at the club. So even though you've lost your coach, you've lost a lot of players from last year, it's the same mentality. It's the same culture at the club. And I'm sure, no matter how many players leave, they're still going to be up there competing next year as well because of what they've created. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to watch the games this weekend. Double header as well. I don't know if you'll be able to tune in, obviously being overseas, but yeah, for me, I'll be watching both games. I think as disappointing as a lot of stuff has been in Australian football media, we always talk about it, but these two semi-finals, they look like they're going to be sold out, and it probably goes to show the smaller markets, if you can create a good culture around those teams and that community aspect, it goes to show that actually goes further. So Central Coast, small town, they're going to sell it out. Wellington, still a big city, but a smaller team in comparison to Melbourne and Sydney. Those teams didn't sell out their home games, and these two have sold them out. 34 or 35,000. I think they think they'll get at Wellington, 20 odd thousand in Gosford. So it's going to be pumping at both games.
Yeah, and that's why this is the best time of year. And why wouldn't the Wellington faithful get behind that team? They've never been this successful. They've never done this well. So honestly, Giancarlo Italiano, we didn't speak too much about the Knicks in preseason. There wasn't too much on them, but what he's done there this season has been nothing short of incredible. The same with
On that, Gary, with we didn't rate teams, did we? Where we think they're going to
no, we
finish?
didn't
Because
rate teams.
did you
Look,
see what Chiefy came out saying?
nah. What did he say?
He said something like, we've been using it as motivation. People had predicted us to come near the bottom. And I was just thinking, fuck, like, I know we wouldn't be using us as the podcast, but I was thinking, fuck, did we predict them to come near the bottom? Imagine if they had a big Football Friends podcast up there saying they said we're going to be shit.
To be honest, we definitely didn't predict them to be near the bottom. Did I expect them to be near the top? Definitely not. I didn't know enough about them in preseason. Like there wasn't really too much on the Knicks. Obviously, being in New Zealand, it is a little bit harder to do that homework. But also a new coach that's never been seen before. Historically, Wellington haven't been super successful. So you're going like, oh, what's going to be different this year? It's not as if they've gone and spent a ridiculous amount of more money. The team was fairly similar. It's just, honestly, it goes to show, a good coach, a good culture, a buy-in from the players. Doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go out and spend bucket loads of cash. It doesn't mean you need to have the best players on paper. They do have a very good squad, but I wouldn't say it's at the level of your some of your Melbourne teams or Sydney teams, but what they've got is a fantastic culture, and the way they've played this year has been unbelievable.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, and I think, to be honest, with what Central Coast did last year, with what they're doing again this year in Wellington, both on very small budgets, there's a lot of talk around the distribution next year and whatever else. But I think, to be honest, what these two teams have done this year is going to change the budgets for a lot of teams anyway, knowing that you don't need to spend a lot of money to be successful. There's a lot of things you can do well off the field that contribute massively to on-field performances. And, it's never good if we're cutting budgets for the sake of it, but there's also no need to spend money if you don't need to. So it's going to be really interesting to see, going forward in years to come, can you still be successful on smaller budgets, or will teams look to spend big money to try and get that success? Either way, these coaches, Mark Jackson and Chiefy have done an amazing job, and yeah, it's going to be interesting. But our guest is waiting, and we've got to get him in because we know he can talk a lot, and you're on a short schedule with your testings. I need you to get those right because if I'm coming over there next off season, I want to be eating well.
Don't worry, you will. Let's get Hoffy in.
Chapness, cut back. Chance, Hoffman! The Newcastle boy! A hit as sweet as you like by the Jets' longest serving player, Jason Hoffman.
And welcoming to the episode today, it's a very close friend of both me and Steph, and someone who's been super influential on our careers. Probably one of the nicest guys when we first became professional footballers and walked into Melbourne Heart back all those years ago. So a very warm welcome to Jason Hoffman.
Benny, Steph, thanks so much for having me on the Football Friends podcast. I've been looking forward to it. It's taken you guys long enough, so man, I'm finally honoured to be to be a feature episode on the pod.
We were waiting. We were waiting for you to get to the 300 games, and now you've hung the boots up. We thought the time was now, so you can spill all the beans about your career, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. But why don't you take us back, I guess, to your? We don't want to go too much into the junior years, but kind of when you got to the AIS and getting that first professional contract. How did that look for you? And then when did that moment kind of click where you thought, you know what, I've got it here. I'm gonna make it as a professional footballer.
Yeah, obviously, I won't bore you all with like you said, with too much of the junior stuff, but um, it is crazy because even now in the couple of weeks since I've played, my last professional game, the people you see in the street, they still ask you now, oh, any advice for the young lad or any advice for my daughter about, making it through, I guess, the pathway to try and become a professional. And I guess what I say is everyone's journey is different. So for me, it was a very different journey. I mean, when I realized I maybe had a little bit of talent was probably at the ages 12, 13 when I was selected in my first rep squad. And then at the end of those 2 years, you could either stay in that sort of identified pathway in the northern New South Wales region, or you could go back and just play community football. So for me, I wanted to play community football just because that's where I enjoyed playing with a certain group of lads that I knew. So I went to my local club, but they had a very strong first grade in the NPL competition. And through that system, I kind of got fast tracked into first grade at a young age, where our team ended up playing the New South Wales Institute of Sport in a friendly match. So I was lucky enough to be invited to go to that game. I played that day, scored a couple of goals, and then there was coaches at the Institute of Sport that were there and said, "Look, why don't you come and sort of train with us for a few days, and we might have a scholarship for you in our program." And then obviously that could lead into the RAS program and youth national team set up, and there could be a real strong pathway for you this way. So sure enough, that was it. I guess I played in that game, went to N-Swiss training, got a scholarship there. Um, and then I guess I had my major first setback when it came to the AIS squad. So initially I wasn't accepted. So I thought, wow, there's obviously a big kick in the guts here. This is a program where once you get in, I guess, back then you were kind of almost guaranteed to get through that system and be offered something in the professional setup because we didn't have the National Youth League then. So yeah, for me to miss out on that initial intake was, gut wrenching. So I guess I went back to Newcastle Olympic and the team I was playing first grade for here. Finished training with the N Swish on a 2 year scholarship there, and sure enough, one of the coaches there, Gary Van Egmond, who was involved, in the senior setup at the Jets, identified me at training and said, "Look, why don't you come and train with the first team at the Jets? We think you're good enough." He heard that I guess I had the setback of not making the RAS squad, so he wanted to see for himself. There was obviously a local lad like myself who was, I guess identified to kind of be in that program, missed out. He wanted to see, and then invited me into Jets training. And obviously, that's when I thought, okay, if I can do a half decent job and work hard and show some kind of quality in front of these guys, then I might bypass the system and I might end up in the professional scene quicker than I thought. So that's when I guess it wasn't until that moment that the penny dropped where I'm like, okay, this could happen for me. And then, he put me on a scholarship when I finished, so I could finish year 12 at school. And then as soon as that finished, I was down at the RAS anyway, taking a scholarship for about another 6 months to align, I guess, myself with the coaches there as they were going to, I guess, play a major part in picking the under-20s World Cup squad in Egypt in 2009. And for me, obviously, that was a massive goal then. And then I came back from my short stint at the RAS, was handed a professional deal, and as I mentioned, we went on to win the league in my first year, 2008, and yeah, I guess that propelled the rest of my career going forward. That you know, I worked out after many years. It's so difficult to make a grand final. So I look back on that first year, and I'm so grateful that I had the chance to not only play in one, but obviously win one because I played in one 10 years later and lost it.
Fuck. You wouldn't have been thinking at that time that that would be the only silverware that you'd get for your whole career?
Well, it's probably not, to be honest, because I had a bit of a crazy run of I guess a bit of luck and a bit of right place, right time, where I was always part of a team that won. So right from juniors, I'm sure a lot of guys that and yourselves would be a part of junior teams where maybe you just had success and that's all you kind of knew. Like there wasn't many games as a youngster where I remember losing too many. So I was always a part of a winning team. And then, funnily enough, when I made my debut against, well, it's Brisbane Roar, but then it was Queensland Roar at home in Newcastle, that was actually the NPL Grand Final. So, Gary, the coach, said to me basically, you can make your debut or play in the Grand Final. So I obviously been the NPL Grand Final and made my debut. And they ended up winning the NPL. I made my debut. I think we won the game against Queensland Roar, and it was just kind of the thing where I just transitioned from one stage of my journey to the next, being a part of a successful team. So yeah, it was kind of surreal, I guess, that I didn't really know the magnitude of winning the A League. My first year, it didn't really sink in. I think till a few years later, where I realised wow, it's so difficult to make finals, let alone being a grand final and then win it. So never in my wildest dreams did I think it would take 10 years to get back there, but sure enough it did.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think all kind of like you said, all young players, especially in Australia, I think that's one of our biggest issues is that there's not probably enough talent. So the good players, their teams that they're a part of, the other good players kind of go there and they become so dominant. You just get used to winning, and you probably don't have too many setbacks along the way. So as you touched on in yours, your first setback was not making the AIS, but a lot of players, maybe their first setback is when they get involved with the A-League system and they can't handle that kind of pressure or that resilience that you need to kind of make it at the top level. What in your eyes, I guess, made you be like, what, I need to go away from this. I need to work harder. I need to keep on training to get to that next point rather than kind of throwing in the towel. Not saying that you would have, but a lot of players I see now, especially, they get that first big setback and it's kind of like, well, this coach doesn't like me, fuck him. And they just put the tools down rather than actually getting to work.
Yeah, look, I to be honest, in many ways I agree. I feel like now a lot of players um, don't have the same, I guess, personality, and they don't have the same, I guess, ethos as a lot of players when I was a kid. It's just different times. That's all it is. And as a senior player, I found that a little bit difficult in the last couple of years to fully connect with some of the younger ones. I mean, I always got on well when it came to banter and in the change room and all that sort of, I guess, that enjoyable side of the change room. But when it comes to on the pitch and working hard and being able to give and receive feedback, in a direct manner like we have to, I found it difficult with a lot of the younger generation to do that because a lot of them they're just different. It's not a good thing, a bad thing. It's just different. And for me as a kid, obviously, I think what actually helped now that I think about it was the fact that there wasn't a youth league at the time. So it was pretty much sink or swim. You went from the NPL competition straight into the A League team. So you were either good enough or you weren't. And not many young boys ever got the opportunity to do that. It was a pretty experienced squad. A lot of the players had a lot of senior football experience, even the younger guys then, like Tarek Elrich. Adam DePuzo, they came through the system in Sydney, which is a lot more cutthroat, I would say, than Newcastle. So they had experience of playing in bigger matches against probably arguably some better players. So for me, I guess being in that situation, I sort of had confidence when I had that setback. Yes, it was huge, but I still thought, do you know what? I'm in the right place here for some reason. I feel like there will be another chance. You don't just get that one chance if you work hard enough. And for me, it really comes down to how much I wanted it, how much I wanted to sacrifice. Because, as you guys would I guess admit as well, you're at that age at 17, 18 where things start to change in your life as a young lad. You get the opportunity to maybe go out. You want to go out with your mates, and they start talking about, oh, they're going out, having a couple of quiet drinks, meeting girls, whatever. But for me, to be honest, I was never that interested in that at all, because I was so desperate to just want to train and have a point of difference and be better. And I guess for me, it quickly became disappointment in that AIS moment I will end up getting back there because I'm going to show, the coaches at the time why I deserve to be there, and I'm sure it's going to happen. It was kind of like almost the stubbornness that I had, that no, I need to prove a point here. I need to make sure that this happens, and I don't want to feel like this again. So, it is what it is. If you love what you do and you want to spend time on the ball and working at your craft, and you're willing to work harder than most, then you've got a chance. You still need that talent. You still need a lot of other pieces of the puzzle to come into place, as you guys know. But I think the baseline is that if you love what you do and you're prepared to sacrifice and work hard, then you're giving yourself every chance. And I really did that over that sort of initial period of being, copping my first major setback. And sure enough, the stars aligned and I bounced back pretty quickly.
Well, you got that deal, major debut, and then as football does, it moves you to sometimes places that you don't expect to be, and you ended up moving down to Melbourne, a bit of a better city than Newcastle,
Come on,
and
boys.
I I guess that's when obviously we got to meet you for the first time, and our paths kind of crossed, and obviously we were two young pups like you were kind of when you first came into the Newcastle Jets setup, and we were two young pups coming straight out of the AIS, and just a few years later than you, but we were absolutely, we were young pups and we didn't have too much to say. We were very quiet. We were like birds that have had their wings clipped coming out of the AIS. We thought we were top dogs there, and then you get into the senior setup for the first time, and you feel like you're down the bottom of the pecking order. And I don't want to pump your tires up too much, but you were definitely probably, one of the nicest guys back then. To be honest, you're probably one of the best guys in football, and a lot of people will say that about you. But back then, you were probably one of the first ones to actually give us the time of day and put your arm around us a little bit. And I think you were the one that took us for our first ever coffee at La Trobe University. I think me and Steph wanted to order a hot chocolate, and you said that wasn't possible. We had to at least order a mocha.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then from then on, obviously, for me,
The mocha with 4 sugars.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
You're embarrassing yourselves. I gave you a
but
chance and you're embarrassing yourself.
honestly, like I think back to that, for me now, coffee is one of my, probably outside of football, one of my biggest passions. And yeah, you were the first one to kind of to invite us to come with the boys, Nicky Kalmar, Aziz Bayic, Mate Deganzic back then. It was
Yeah.
a decent crew that we had. So yeah, I suppose take us back to Melbourne, how that kind of came about for you, and why you decided to make the move over to Melbourne.
Yeah. Yeah, well, obviously, mate, thanks for your kind words. I don't get them from you often, either of you two, so it's nice. But yeah, look, it's an interesting take that you have on that time, because I'll touch on it, I guess, now when we talk about Melbourne. I guess how and why I guess I behaved a certain way, in my opinion, with the two of you guys. But yeah, I guess initially, like I mentioned before about winning the championship with Newcastle, we came crashing down to earth pretty quickly. I could be wrong, but it could be the next year we were wooden spooners. So things turned pretty quickly when we lost a few key players from that championship winning team. So it became a pretty toxic environment. If I'm being honest, at the time, I had a 2-year deal to stay at Newcastle, which was something that I thought was great, something I wanted, but for whatever reason, the coach at the time, Branko Kalina, had other ideas for how much game time I was going to get. I believe, he saw a side of me that wasn't going to be a regular player in his team, and I'd have to fight a bit harder maybe than some to get game time. So then I was faced with the reality of, okay, am I going to accept this, or am I going to look elsewhere? And then there was this startup team, Melbourne Heart, that I heard about through Matt Thompson, because he was someone I looked up to a lot in Newcastle, and he had signed as one of the initial signings at Melbourne Heart. And sure enough, through my manager at the time, John Gamord, they reached out and they said, you've been involved with the youth national team. We've got this startup club. Tomo's on board. Would you consider it? And to be honest, after a few conversations about the direction the club sort of wanted to go in, and the fact that Melbourne is a great city, for sport, and I thought, yeah, this is something I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of something new, exciting, and it could be the right challenge for me to push and be around, I guess, a quality side that they were forming. So yeah, I guess it was a great time to be a part of a startup club. I was there for 5 great years through the transition to Melbourne City, which you two obviously have been a part of as well. But interesting enough that you say about your time coming into the change room, because obviously I think we did have a really good change room. The guys you mentioned before, Aziz, as we all know, is cheeky as all hell. But a lovely guy. Nicky Kalmar, one of the best teammates in the change room. I think I still say to people he's got to be in my top 5 teammates of all time for just getting like fun shit done. He's just a good dude. And we had, I think, Redders was probably still there as well.
Yeah.
Mate, you mentioned, another great
Willow.
guy. Willow, of course. So we had a really good group that isn't too, I guess, intimidating. But in saying that, we had, because when you are a startup club, it takes a couple of years to get the wheels really going with some kind of momentum. And there was a lot of guys that came in and out and trialed and sort of came into the environment that just didn't fit. And then I heard that we were getting 2 young whippersnippers in from the AIS. And I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. They've come through the system that I got a taste of myself. And I thought, yeah, if you're coming through that system and you've been identified to be on a pro deal, then, you're going to have some real quality. So for a start, you came in, with some real kudos, coming in from that system. But it was pretty evident straight away, if I'm being honest, that the 2 of you were very, very different to a lot of other young players that came in and out. Your ability to realize that this was a really good opportunity, we needed to come in and make a mark straight away, was so evident. And from the first session, you just had a real desire to get involved. You weren't timid, you weren't shy. If you were saying, Benny, that, you felt like a small fish in a big pond, mate, it didn't show. So from the first training session where you came in, and your attitude to training and how you did the small things so well, the small details, I was like, yeah, I really like these 2 lads. And I guess it was just the first point I had where I didn't realize that I was the youngest anymore, and I really liked the idea of trying to help you guys in the situation. So it is what it is. We went for a coffee. You guys ordered an embarrassing hot chocolate at the La Trobe Uni, whatever. But yeah, I guess that initial step to come into the environment was one that I saw as an exciting thing to be a part of, because I thought, yeah, these 2 I think are gonna do something in the game. They've just got a different mindset to many other young guys that I was around at both clubs now, and I thought, yeah, I want to get around these 2. And to be honest, initially, if I'm being honest, the one that caught the eye was Morky. Steph, you caught the eye because you just came in and started snapping people. You were just leaving challenges in left, right, and center. Even when you signed and you started playing, I remember you were in the youth team, and I remember
Yeah.
Johnny A used to go off because he'd come into training and
He's
say,
getting
"Oh,
red cards.
he's getting red cards left, right, and centre. Like your enthusiasm was something that we all loved, but you just needed to rein it in. And now, and you still haven't changed. Years later, here you are, just absolutely going around chirping, halving people. There you go.
Yeah.
But then I think I've mentioned this before to someone else, maybe even the both of you. I don't know. But then I remember we played a friendly game at Epping Stadium, and yeah, I'll never forget it because we were absolute garbage in that game. And we had one shining light. I mean, you both did well, but I remember Benny, you were on flames. It was literally you were our left winger, and I was like, you know what, just get the ball to this guy. He's going to make something happen because we were poo, but you were so far the other way. Every time you got it, you were winning a foul, going past someone, getting a crossing, getting a shot, and I'm like, yeah, this guy's like he's when it's come to 11v11, the first game he's a part of, he's turning on the Hot Wheels. So we were just like, yeah, this is his
I
moment to
remember
sort
that
of
game.
say, who is it against? Do you
I think it was
remember?
against.
Uh,
I think it might have been Adelaide, to be honest.
no, it was an NPL team, wasn't it? Or was it
I
A
thought
Was it?
League?
I just remember I had a shot from halfway, and it was like my first ever game. So I
I
just
don't
remember
know.
that.
I
Yeah.
remember thinking that the confidence was through the roof. And we were just like, yeah, I wasn't sure who it was against. I thought it might have been an NPL team as well, to be fair,
Yeah.
but I
I
just
think it
remember you were on
was.
fire. And we
Hmm.
were like, yeah, okay, this is Benny's moment where he's gone, yeah, because Steph in training was probably showing that little bit more that he settled probably a bit quicker. But then in that game, you just took off, and I was like, shit, he surprised us all. So you're our go-to guy, and then yeah, I guess you both had very, you know, I guess very different journeys since, but here you are still going strong. So clearly
Needed
there was
JA to back him a bit more, huh? Fucking hell, give
that
him
was
some
it.
minutes.
JA, and here you are years later, where JA is backing you to the hill. So there you go. I mean, you
Yeah,
should
I
have been
know.
dropped. You should have been dropped weeks ago. He's still backing you.
You know what? It's
Uh,
funny. Like sometimes it does. It comes around full circle. But look, I think we have to touch on maybe a couple of those nights out that we had, the Melbourne Heart days, the original days. I remember the nights with when PK Paddy Casnovo came in as well and planned a couple of team outings. But I do remember one particular night, Shanghai Dumpling in Melbourne. It's a popular place for a team night out. It's quite good. It's
Pop,
BYO. The food's
Popular menu.
popular
BYO,
venue.
cheap
There's a
cheap
few,
dumplings.
but honestly, these nights out and like it's funny because we speak about it now, and but me and Steph, that was like our chance. Those nights out were our chances to kind of go. Hopefully the boys rate us. We've got to have a crack. We've got to have a drink, and it was obviously a different drinking culture back then. But I remember me and Steph, probably there's a good 3 or 4 of those nights where I remember that our heads ended up in the gutter because we were trying to keep up with the older lads and we just couldn't do it. And the next morning we were waking up, going to a first aid course, and we're stopping the car the whole way there because we're bloody throwing up because we're
I
hungover from
remember
the,
that.
the night out the night before.
I do remember it. Oh, mate, we had. I have to admit, we had great nights out, and it was a good chance because obviously I was with my girlfriend at the time, who's now obviously my wife, Tash, who you both know, came to the wedding, and yeah, obviously the first year there, and I guess the first couple of years, she was living in Sydney, so obviously when you're going out with the boys, you kill time because you're on your own, and then you guys come along and there's a few more younger guys around and you want to go out sometimes without the partners. And sure enough, I remember my birthday night at Shanghai Village Dumpling. I don't know if you remember that. There was one night there when we went there and went to Chocolate Lounge afterwards. I don't know if you remember that night. I don't know, but yeah,
I remember that night. I
it's
remember that
absolute
night.
it's absolute mayhem. You're young, you get a few drinks in, you get a bit of Dutch courage, and next minute you're starting football chants and upstairs at Shanghai Village Dumpling. You're flinging dumplings across the bar. You're just going with whatever. It's BYO. You know what? We're running low. One of the young lads, here's some money. Go down to the bottle down the street in Chinatown and bring back a couple of more bottles or beers or whatever you're doing, and the night just kicks on. And I remember you're rocking up to a first aid course the next day
I reckon.
hungover, and I'm in bed for 2 days. I can't. My guts were nowhere. So I was absolutely rattled, but yeah, we did have some good times, certainly in Melbourne going out. But I don't know if you guys were there. The best one ever was, and I'm going to stitch him up here, was Eli Babal. Was He organised? There was a massive night at Track in South Yarra, where we basically rocked up and it was DJ Havana Brown was playing, and he's like, "This is going to be the best ever. I've organised it, whatever." Sure enough, a lot of the lads rock up, and I'm like, "Oh, this is going to be massive." We rock up and the guy at the door just looks at us and goes, basically, "Piss off. Who the hell are you guys? Get out of here." And we're all like, "Oh, Ellie, you've killed it, whatever." And he turns around and he goes, "But come on, we're Melbourne Heart." And he yells out in front of the whole line of all people, "We're Melbourne Heart." And we're like, "For Christ's sake, here we go." Sure enough, it worked and we got in. But it was an unbelievable night down at South Yarra watching DJ Havana Brown. So sure enough, there we are in DJ Havana Brown. And I've come from watching God knows Tony Bungle down here in Newcastle at the wharf here, and then I'm in there in the big city going to big gigs like that. We went to Rod Laver Arena watching concerts. It was just madness, but that was just, I guess, the plus side of being in a big city where there was events coming through left, right, and centre. But yeah, God, the Shanghai Village dumpling nights, it became a regular thing. We were going there getting cheap food and flinging dumpling around left, right, and centre.
Yeah, it's I think those nights were like, to be honest, like for us, especially being young boys, like it's weird now, a side topic, but you weren't that young. Oh, sorry, you weren't that old, but in our
Yeah.
eyes, you were old, but you were only 21. Aziz was
Yeah,
maybe 21, 22,
No,
but
he
we
was
thought
maybe 22. Aziz was 21 or something.
yeah. Well, you started what,
we were
2012?
17,
Were you 2012?
Yeah,
12,
yeah,
no, or 13,
yeah,
12 or
around
13,
there.
12 or yeah, 12 or
2012, yeah, maybe it
13.
was. Yeah, 12,
So
yeah,
yeah,
12, 12.
so you're right. I would have been, yeah, I still would have been early 20s. I would have been 22 maybe, yeah. And
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's
I guess
fucking
it's
crazy.
because for me, I guess I had that um, that connection with someone like Tomo, who was a bit older than me. He was in that change room. And that was an easy in for me through like his network that he knew of some of those boys that came in. So
Yeah,
for me, it was an easy in. I was good with him. He, I guess, allowed me to hang out. I was hanging out with him, and it allowed me to get to know some of those senior guys a bit closer, after training. Because, like you're saying, it's those nights out, it's the dinners, it's the lunches that you do that basically cement how the boys think about you. Whether or not they
yeah.
actually
Mm.
like you away from the pitch. And for me, I guess I had that in straight away. So maybe that's why I guess I seemed a bit older, is that were the boys that I ended up very comfortable with. So I was actually craving some young guys to come along, and sure enough, we had some great guys like you two and Aziz and some of those guys come along. It was good to sort of start doing our own thing a little bit different as well.
Yeah, and that's, I feel like, not hammering the young boys now. It's completely different. Everything in the world is different. But like, I feel like when we were young, when you asked us to go for lunch or for coffee, we were like fucking buzzing. We were like, fuck, the older boys are asking us to come. Like, it's a privilege. We need to go there. Like, we can never say no to them. Where now it's almost like they couldn't really give two fucks if we asked them to go out for a coffee. The young boys, they don't care about us. I don't know why it's different, but back then it was like, we have to go. We have to make an impression, whether it's a lunch, whether it's a dinner. Like, if they like us off the field, they'll rate us on the field as well. And I think that's still true. You probably go that extra mile to help us on the field because you like us as a person off it.
I agree. I totally agree. And I was the same. Any chance I had to hang out with, like I said, Tomo, Clint Bolton, Simon Colosimo, Wayne Shroy. We had Josip Skoko come in. We had Fred, the Brazilian. Um, you know, Gerald Sabon in the early years. Like some of these guys, I was like, man, I feel like I'm in like a A-League Socceroos squad or something. It was crazy how much I respected them. And then yeah, like you're saying, they ask you to go for lunch or coffee, and you don't even think. You just go, yeah, I just want to be around them. I want to learn. I want to
Mm.
leave a good impression. You're just buzzing to be accepted into that environment, because I think, as we sort of realize, it helps you on the field. You're right. They go that little bit extra for you, and when things are tough at training as well, they'll stand up for you. And yeah, I think it pays off a lot. And yeah, like you're saying, I just feel like, I don't want to criticize the new generation too much because it's so different. Like I'm saying, it's just different to how I was and how a lot of the younger guys were when we were going through the system in the early years. But I find that they just very much stick to themselves, and it's not so much the done thing where you go for big team lunches after training and a lot of boys are hanging out. I'm sure the guys do. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure that there's a lot of boys that still go and do that, but it's certainly very different now, and a lot of them aren't interested in the same things. Like we have a lot of guys like similar to you boys when you started that just don't enjoy having a coffee. So that makes it hard for a start. They just don't want to sit there all day and have a chat about coffee and you try and even just pull them aside at training for 5 minutes, and it's almost like they're thinking, okay, where's this going to go? Is he going to chew my ear off for 5 minutes about what I'm doing wrong? Or it's almost that I just don't want to be bothered with any more time than I have to give to this environment, which to be honest is it could be wrong, but that's the impression sometimes that they give off, that they just want to come in, do the bare minimum, get by, and then piss off home. Which is definitely not how I guess any of us saw that environment. But there's the exceptions to it too. There's a lot of guys. We had an extremely young team at the Jets this past season, and there's a lot of guys there that do go, I guess, above and beyond. And it's good to see people change too, because we had someone like Stemmer, who came into the Jets environment a few years ago, and he was always doing the job on the field. He was always one of those guys that, like, we can throw him on, he'll get a goal or something. But, that guy had I guess, a really tough time over in Greece. But he matured and he came back, and he was a real leader in our change room this year. He was someone that wanted to do the extra mile. He wanted to challenge the staff on getting video content. He wanted to do shooting at the end of training. Okay, the S&C is saying about the loads. He's the first guy to go, stuff the load. I need to do 5-10 minutes here, and a bit more that old school drive to sort of stay away from that overload side and start thinking, no, I just need it. I feel good today. I'm going to do it. And I think that rubbed off on a couple of other young guys that sort of needed to see that. You had, I think, we've got someone like Lucas Moragas, who's obviously moved on to Central Coast now, but he's always had a work ethic that was just, I'm going to outwork everyone. I'm just going to, if he's doing it, I'm doing it. I'm just going to do more. And it's paid off because his development, he's just got better and better and better. And for someone that has that attitude and who's a lovely guy, yeah, I can be pissed off he's gone to Central Coast, but it's not my choice. As you know, your career's small. You go where you think's right, and I wish him the best because his attitude alone and the personality he is, he deserves to have success. So I wish he has it. I just don't wish Central Coast have any more.
Yeah.
No, I think
Spoken like a fucking true Newcastle Jets local boy. But yeah, I know you were going to say something, Ben, but it's so interesting, like, that you look at it the exact same way and you feel like those young boys are like that. But I remember me and Ben, all we wanted to do, we go to these coffees, but we wanted to pick your brain on, whether it was you, whether it was Patrick Gerhardt, whether it was, PK or Shime or Harry Kewin. Like, you wanted to find out, Orlando Engler, like these big players, anyone that can kind of give us something that helps us, asking what's it like in Europe, or what do I need to work on, or how can I play, or even if it was off-field stuff, whether you're talking about property and these different things. Like, you've got so much information because of we're 17, 18, but we're around, or Butzer, who's 36 at the time. There's an 18-year gap. Not many other industries do you get, to mix with someone that's at, the first year of their career and they've been in the industry for 18 years. Very rare that you're spending time with them. And we wanted to make use of that, where now, like you said, it seems like they just, they couldn't care less. And it's disappointing because the ones that do care, they're the ones that go on and perform well and will actually have a really, really successful career.
Yeah, and you know what it is? I don't know if it's they don't care. I mean, you probably have some that don't care for that side of the game. They just want to focus on themselves and their own journey and what they need out of the game. But I feel like a lot of it comes down to just the personality. The personality is that, we were, I guess, players, and I guess that we're all three of us are very similar, is that you weren't shy to go and have those conversations. You're intrigued. You wanted to know about, of course, you have someone like Paddy Casnorvo, Harry Kewell in your change room, you want to pick their brain. And we probably weren't shy about pissing them off. If we thought it was going to annoy him a bit, sorry, I just want to ask because I'm so interested. Whereas I feel like the personality of a lot of the younger players coming through is that they almost don't want to step on your toes. They almost just don't want to, I don't want to bother him. I don't know if
Mm.
it's a case where or maybe they do, but they just don't have, they haven't developed that social side of the change room yet, that intelligence to go, there's a right way to approach it, there's a right time. I do want to sit down and take five with you if you got a minute. And a lot of them are just they're very insular. They go into the change room, they're straight away on their phone. They're just in their own little world. And I feel like it does play a massive part with how they engage with people. And you know, even you look at the complete flip side about then the position they're in, where people look up and admire them from the community. Young kids, when you
Mm.
go to promotions, you see how players, that are a bit more experienced, how they engage in promotional activity is so different to the young ones. But the quicker they realise that age is pretty irrelevant in the change room, the quicker they can come out of their shell and they can start leading in their own way. And that even goes down to these promotions that you do in the community and the way you engage with stakeholders that are invested and they admire you. Little kids, as you would see, 5, 6 years old at these clinics, they look at you like a superhero. You're not a young guy to them. You're not 17 years old that haven't played many games or whatnot. You got young guys like Clayton Taylor, who's very quiet, doesn't say a word, but they look at Clayton Taylor in Newcastle, some of the young kids, and he's Superman to them. And the
Mm.
quicker people like that realize that they've got an opportunity to grow into that persona and grow into that, I guess that figure for the club, the community, and for themselves, then they will come out of their shell and they will start engaging the people they need to get any little bit of information they can to be better, whether that's a senior player in the change room or coaching staff. Or I feel like they'll become more proactive when they realise the opportunities there, and maybe that they've taken such a big step to get to where they are. But really, as I've said to some of those young guys, even now, like the goal shouldn't be to get here. Once you're in the system and you feel like I want to become a professional, that's setting the bar too low. You want to have a career, right? You want to have 10 to 15 years or more at the top in the professional environment. It's not about becoming a professional. It's about having a career. And I feel like hopefully some of those guys will grow into that in the next couple of years. And obviously Rob, our coach, did his part in trying to blood a lot of young guys in this year and give them that exposure to realize that they can be confident and they can get results. Even though, the year panned out it wasn't consistent enough for us. But you just hope that the byproduct of that is that these younger guys in the next couple of years realize that, yeah, we can do it, and they grow.
Mm. You only actually get that one way though, and that's by actually giving the young boys a chance. Because a lot of the time you see ones that are actually good enough and they don't get the chance, and then they're losing 1, 2, 3 years of development. Whereas if you've got a coach or you've got a club that's making a sentiment to actually play these young players and give them chances, as long as that's the philosophy that you're going to keep on following and hopefully that you can keep them, just like kind of in the AFL when teams go through rebuilding phases, if Newcastle can keep those players and keep playing them for 2, 3, 4 years, you can actually create a really successful squad. The problem I feel like in Australian football is they they're not able to keep the players. So you end up losing the player to maybe another club, or you can't have a long enough contract. So you end up losing the player, he goes overseas. So then you don't actually get to see that full circle of all the time and investment that you've put into these young players.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you look at, I guess, Australia on the global stage, on how I guess a lot of people see football, in Australia and the league here, it's one of those situations where sometimes the Aussie players just have to work that little bit harder. They just have to do that little bit more. And, when the opportunity comes, and it can come quick for some, they dive at it, they go. So if you have a style like for example, let's take Newcastle Jets, this year. where Rob, did back the young players. The reality is that if they then play and they do well and they get an opportunity the next year or so, they're going to take that opportunity to go. So that then disturbs the next cycle at the Jets. So the opportunity for club success, it becomes almost secondary to, I guess, developing the individual and suiting, I guess, their needs and what they want out of their career. Where you hope the happy medium is that it marries up. If they're doing well for the club and the club's having success, then the players reap the benefits as well. But that it's a fine balance to have, and obviously Rob has, come in and he's been very firm on his way of backing the young players, which is fine. It is what it is. It has to happen eventually where the next gen comes through. But yeah, like you said, Ben, before you took off, there was, there's that balance about they come in, they do well. Are they going to stay long enough to see success for the club? And that's what fans care about. That's what passionate, local fans care about. Like we want to see our players come and do well, and we want to see young players. We want to see locals, but they also want to see the club win. So, it's a fine balance between what's right for the player and what's right for the club. But you just hope that you find that they marry up.
Well, I guess like Adelaide now are probably a few years ahead of, let's say, someone like Newcastle, where we've probably done it a little bit when we were having success. We've also started to blood the young players, so they're kind of getting a little bit of an easier ride. Where if you're in a successful team and you're a young player, it's easier to just do your job and stand out, rather than when there's so many young players and you're near the bottom and you're all trying to prove yourself. But I think in the A-League, the biggest challenge you're always going to have, and like you both have just said, if you do too well as a young player, for the club's point of view, it's a good thing because you sell them and you get a bit of a transfer fee for them, but you also lose that player that you've put time into, and maybe the next one's not coming through. But that's really on the clubs to, I think, give out these long contracts for players that deserve it, so you can actually command a big transfer fee. And just because you're developing a Clayton Taylor, you've actually got a Clayton Taylor 2.0 in the youth team that's ready to go. And that's something that's going to take time to happen, but you should be ready and thinking, you know what, Clayton Taylor this year, we're going to sell him. So we need to make sure we start getting the next one ready to come through, or we've identified someone else in the system that can be that player. Because success is great in Australian football, but as the Mariners happened to them last year, you lose 5 or 6 players, but they're doing well again because they've recruited well. Can they do it again if they sell another 5 or 6? I'm not too sure, but that's the reality, and that's the nature of football in this country. And all teams, after seeing the Mariners' success and Adelaide's success with selling players, I think are all shifting to, we need to make money, and this transfer system or ecosystem is so big and we haven't tapped into it enough. Let's focus on this, which is great, but you don't want to lose the element. And without knowing what's going on in Newcastle, obviously different situation, someone like yourself, you should have been playing every single game to help your Natters and help your Dane Inghams and help your Clayton Taylors, because you're going to set the standard and they can see that on the field. That's where you don't want to just give opportunities for the sake of it, because I know the way you train, and I guarantee you probably deserve to be playing because you would have been the hardest worker every day at training.
Yeah, no, look, obviously, yeah, you guys have been in that environment with someone like myself. And yeah, the thing is, you always want to play, right? You always want to play. And for me, I would have loved more game time for sure this year, but you don't complain about it. It is what it is. I'm at the stage of my career where you try not to worry about that. You try and just stick to your principles and what's got you to where you are and keeping you in the environment. So yeah, look, I guess I didn't miss a session all year, and I haven't missed a session, to be honest, in probably 2 or 3 years. It's just been one of those things where I demand so much of myself, and that only intensified as I got older and I became more of a leader in the change room. I just demanded nothing but the best out of myself, and hopefully that showed to the other players. And yeah, obviously where you can make the biggest mark is right next to them when it comes showtime on game day. And I guess it is what it is. It's one of those things where you train hard, you put yourself up, for selection each week, and the coach has got a task to pick the best players he believes will get the job done. But I guess that's going back to when we first started talking about, your I guess, your kicks in the guts, so to speak, and the downtimes and the hardships of football. Is that's a massive one for a lot of players. Is that they can be in the environment and get that chance, but then you find yourself maybe not playing, or you're in the youth team, or you sit on the bench, and each week it's like a cycle. You start rebuilding a bit of energy at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then you get close to the end of the week, you do a bit of shape at training, oh, maybe not in the team again, and you can see some players their standard will just drop a little bit, whereas for someone like myself, it's kind of been like, okay, if anything, you go that little bit harder and you want to just push a little bit more. And hopefully throughout the course of the last, season that I had, that rubbed off on, like you're saying, on young guys like Nada, who for me has, so much talent and so much ability. He's someone that, he's obviously extended his time at the club. So he's someone that's more than capable of leading that back line, but he needs to develop as well other parts of his game over the next couple of years. And you hope that comes through, and then the club has success around players like that for a few years, and then they're ready to make the next step.
It's unbelievable. Honestly, the career that you had, to be honest, 300 games. These days, I think, there's not too many games, and there's not going to be too many players to actually do it. So it's a huge testament to you, Hoff. I think the professional that you are, on the field and off the field. I think from the moment that we played with you, the way that you would train every day, you were very hard in on the tackles, especially on me. I was a left winger back then. You were right back, and you didn't give me much at training, but I just remember doing the runs in preseason, the beat test, the yo-yo test, the doggies, and I remember that you would always be leading the way, and you were always someone that I would try and look up to try and be as fit as you, because I sort of pride myself on that aspect of the game as well. But I could never get there. When we played together, I was too young, and you had a couple of years on me, and you were just honestly too fit. And I'm sure that's why you have had the career that you've had, because that's the way you've gone about your work. And aside from that, you're probably one of the best fucking blokes there is in Australian football. So you've gone down as a Novocastrian legend, 300 gamer, and I just want to say thanks for giving your time to come on here. I think we could probably chat for another 2 or 3 hours, but we'll leave it there. And just want to thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, lads. Look, obviously, thanks so much for the kind words. But when you get to my, I guess, age, I'll say now, is that you realize that, yeah, you put yourself and apply yourself like you just mentioned, like I believe I did, but you always need a bit of pressure. And then you got two young guys like you who have both already had so much success in your own right in your own career, and I'm sure you'll continue to have a few more years, hopefully a lot more years of success to come. But you have two guys like you that come in just below you that put that pressure on. So you said, you mentioned the fitness side of it, Benny. I used to look at you and go, okay, he's going to catch me, so I need to go harder. So it's the pressure that you have from good young guys that come through that keep you in the game. And you two did that for me. So for me, look, I'm grateful that, obviously I got the chance to finally come on the pod. It's about bloody time. And yeah, obviously, hopefully, that I'm sure, obviously, we'll continue our friendship, which is the number one thing I'm grateful for. I'm so glad that you two boys are doing well. Obviously, you could see that it was probably going to happen pretty much straight away, but good on you two guys to obviously be adventurous enough to start a pod in the first place. A lot of people shit talk and they say they're going to do it. I've been one of them myself. With coffee with Hoffy and all this stuff, and you just never get it off the ground. So good on you lads for obviously getting something else out there in the media, some content about our game, because obviously that's why we're here. We're all passionate about the game, and to be honest, yeah, as someone that's been on the blip of the radar, a small part of your journey, I'm proud that I know the both of you guys. You're champion blokes on and off the field, and yeah, obviously I'll be supporting you both from my humble home here in Newcastle.
Yeah, and maybe the next discussion can be in Melbourne at Dumplings, the BYOs.
Why
Hoff can let his hair down.
why don't we do another episode where we do it live from Shanghai Village one time? You watch, if you put that out there and you say to some of the viewers that, do you want to see us do a live one from Shanghai Village? And we've got to have Nikolai Topol-Stanley there because he's got another funny
Yeah.
story about that place where I know
We
that
need to get that one out there.
his last experience there was not a good one. So we can maybe do a split screen of the four of us in different corners of Shanghai Village where we're flinging them around. And yeah, I know that Nikolai,
And then
you won't be laughing.
we'll round it off with Big Mus Madoka on the table.
Exactly. If you get a bit of what was his song, "Satisfaction" by Benny Benassi,
Yeah.
if you put that on, it's like a trigger for him, like in Zoolander. You put that on, and then there he is. The whippet gets up there. Benny, surely you're playing that in the change room. Surely Mus is getting up
I
and
try
about.
to get him. He's this S&C coach now, so every now and again I say, "Mus, I'll put Satisfaction on," and he just gives me this look from out the corner of his eye and starts laughing. So
Yeah, he knows,
we'll
mate.
see.
He knows
Hopefully,
that.
if we win the league, I think if we win the league, he said he'll bring it out.
Yeah, mate. He has to. He has to.
Oh, thanks, Hoff. We really do appreciate your time, and whatever comes next, you'll be a great asset because I think one thing me, Ben, and yourself have realised, the things that you learn in football, the work ethic translates to everything outside of football as well, life, and because of that, you're going to be successful, and we're really excited to see where you go next. If you do go into a corporate job, if they want to sponsor the pod, get them on here. We need the sponsors. We need some dosh. So
yeah, we can make something happen. No worries. We can look into it.
Easy. Thanks.
Nah,
Thanks,
easy.
Hoff.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate
Hoff.
it. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Football Friends with Ben and Steph is proudly brought to you by the Inner Game Journals, started by none other than our co-host Stephen Moore. The Athlete Performance Journals were created to help athletes of all abilities become more self-aware through goal setting and reflection. On or off the field, the mental side of the game is so crucial to help you feel and perform at your best. Head over to www.theinnergamejournals.com and use code FOOTBALLFRIENDS to get 15% off all products. If you're a club, school or academy, you're in luck. Stefan also runs workshops and he's just released the app version, which will allow you to give direct feedback to players. Download the app for free today. Search The Inner Game on the App Store.
Another top chat. I think, we actually could have spoken, like you said, in that for not just 2 hours, probably about 2 weeks, to be honest. The amount of stories, the things we didn't even cover with Hoff about, I remember he went on trial overseas, different moves that didn't happen. He's moved back to Newcastle, how that came about, probably how he was treated a little bit throughout the period, the grand final that they made and then lost for that controversial decision against Victory. There's so much, but we had to get rid of him. We did have to cut him off there. He wants to keep chewing the fat, but we've got to wrap it up. So the last bit we'll go on to is the All-Star news, which I did mention you made the team, which is amazing. It's great that one of us is going to be in the squad flying the flag. Hopefully you can recruit some new people for the pod for next season as well. So that's your job. Don't worry about the game. Get the feelers out there.
Yeah, I will. I'm actually just looking at the list now, and look, it's just a preliminary squad.
Yeah.
Can't get my words out. Too many wines over here in Italy. The A-League All-Stars, the men's squad, obviously yet to be finalised, with obviously the teams still competing in finals. But for the moment, obviously we've got Lawrence Thomas in goals, Kai Truen, Marcelo, myself as defenders, and midfielders Jay O'Shea, Jake Holman, Tolga Arslan, and my compatriot Dougie Angus Thurgate. So it's a strong midfield, and then obviously up front, Iran Kunda, Lecky, Stanislopoulos, Taggart, Milanovic. So it's going to be an exciting game, and obviously for the women's, their full squad is obviously out with a few pretty familiar names in there. Lydia Williams in goals, Alana Cern, the rising star from Western United, with Grace Mayer as well. Rebecca Stott, she had a great season. Names like Alex Chidiak, who is a star in the women's game. Tamika Yallop. Yeah, to be honest, the names just keep coming. Michelle Heyman, Courtney Vine, Kaya Simon, Princess Abini, Hannah Wilkinson. So
stack squad
all the games.
And coming up against the Arsenal women's team, with the Aussies in it. I don't know what the level actually will be like. I know obviously with the men's because we've seen a lot of those friendlies before, but with the women's, I don't know how many of these types of friendlies have happened. So it's going to be really interesting to see the quality difference from the A-League women's versus against Arsenal, who are of course coming here after a long flight, and they're not playing like it's a proper season game, but they won't want to lose. So it's going to be really interesting. Before these two games, we've got the Tottenham Big Ange. He's just been in the media, absolutely getting stuck into them about the mentality of Spurs. And I'm so disappointed that they couldn't get the job done overnight. Son, 9 times out of 10, scores that one-on-one that he had. And then they go up the other end a couple minutes later, get a penalty 2-0. So probably not the time to be talking about my Gunners, but fingers crossed West Ham will get the job done. I had to slip it in there. But we do have a giveaway. So we have two double passes for each game. So the Tottenham Newcastle game on the Wednesday, we have 2 double passes. And then for the All-Stars game, the double header, the women's against Arsenal, and then the men's against Newcastle. 2 double passes for each of those games. So make sure you're following us on socials to get in the chance to win these. Obviously, they're great tickets to be winning, to see some of the best players in the world in the men's and the women's game. So we're very, very thankful for TEG for giving us these tickets. Make sure you're following us on socials because it's a big giveaway. If you want to watch our boy Garuccio live going up against big Alexander Isak, Joel Linton, Bruno Guimaraes, they're going to be running rings around the All-Star boys, I think.
Look, it's going to be a good game. I'm just wondering whose shirt I'm going to get. That's what I'm pretty
That's the
excited
wrong
for,
mentality,
but,
mate. You got to be worrying about going out there to fucking win.
well, yeah, I'll be going out there to do my job. But no, look, it's going to be really exciting. I was actually speaking to Pena about when he played against Barcelona when it kind of just got announced, and I found out I was in the squad. I was like, fuck, I can't wait. It's going to be so good. And he was like, trust me, like these games, like you think it's a friendly, but these guys, they're not here to fucking lose. And he said, honestly, that first 20 minutes of the game against Barcelona, he said, I've never had a game like that. And I literally could not touch the fucking ball. They were that good. So honestly, I'm actually just really excited to see the level. Played against, some Premier League teams in pre-season while I was over in the UK, but not at the level of, a Newcastle. So they're a top team this year in the Premier League. So really, really looking forward to it. Buzzing with this giveaway that we've got with TEG Sports. So yeah, guys, head to our Insta. Make sure you get on that. The giveaway, we're going to be probably finishing it on Saturday or Sunday, just to give people enough time to book flights and accommodation, because that is not included in the giveaway. Just the tickets.
I thought you were paying for it out of your budget, your match allocation. You said you were going to sort them out at the Garuccio residence.
We'll see how much we get. Oh yeah, maybe I'll set up the Airbnb. I'll be staying in the hotel with the team. So, but no, looking really forward to it. Buzzing that we've managed to get this giveaway going. So yeah, guys, get around it. It's in Melbourne. What a beautiful city to come to. So there's no excuses to not get on board.
Thanks everyone for listening in to another episode. We will do our best to be recording again next week for the grand final one. I'm sure it will be a little bit easier with Ben being back. Tune into the A-League finals games this weekend, and as Ben said, make sure you're on our socials because you don't want to miss out on this opportunity to win some free tickets. Everybody loves a freebie. So thanks again for listening in, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, friend.
Fuck you lot, where's the beer?